Start the recording. Thanks everyone for investing an hour of your lunchtime. As I said before, we'll be here for about 50 minutes, so we won't take the full hour. And this afternoon session is all about this kind of opportunity for the second half of the year to think about how do we reset and kind of get this Q3 boost? How do we boost into Q3 and start to think about driving the right level of success in the second half of 2024? If you've already built momentum in the first half, it's a great opportunity just to revisit some fundamentals. If you think that you perhaps need that reset, then you've got an opportunity in today's session just for us to talk through some of the principles of how we do that reset and re-energize for our teams. And for ourselves as leaders, sometimes it's as important for us to do it for ourselves as it is for our teams. We're just letting a few other people in. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are joining us just now, thanks for joining the session. So let's make a start. These sessions, as those of you who have been here before, you remember these sessions are thinking time. So we spend so much of our days kind of furiously working through actions. These sessions are an opportunity to take your foot off the gas a bit, to create some thinking space. And so it's interesting. I've been hearing a lot about this recently, either in podcasts I'm listening to or books I'm reading, where they're talking about this compression of time now, where we just don't get the thinking space. And that's impacting creativity. It's impacting our ability to think more clearly and focus on what's most important. So hopefully this is an opportunity for you to get that clear thinking space this lunchtime. I appreciate you joining us for this session. So we'll look at how we set growth targets this session, and hopefully some ideas here for you that help you to think differently. We'll talk about that thinking bigger and how we think bigger. Those of you who've been through this session, maybe if you've seen some of these ideas before, an opportunity to revisit them, and then thinking about, when we're in leadership positions, how do we get our team on board to really think about higher performance and to grow at a faster rate, really, for them and for the business. So as I say, I'll do about 15, 20 minutes of content, then we'll open up a couple of breakout rooms, give you a chance to talk to your peers and just share some ideas about what you're thinking following today's session. So I've got this document, which I'll also send to you. I'll send these slides to you after today's session, which talk about 10 ways to start to accelerate growth in a business. Today, we're going to cover the first couple of principles. So the first principle is about setting a goal, right? Setting a goal, defining why we want to achieve the goal, and then setting targets to meet that goal. But goal setting is never what we think it is, right? We think it's straightforward, that we're going to set a target and then there's like this linear approach to achieving it. And it's never like that, right? And so actually recognizing what it really is like, that we put a lot of work in, that sometimes we feel a little bit insecure. Are we doing the right things, especially in leadership positions? We might meet a few failures along the way that really start to get us thinking, differently. Sometimes that can undermine our confidence. We have stuff that goes on outside of our working life, in our personal lives that happens, and so do our teams. We sometimes get help. Sometimes that help's useful. If you're in a bigger organization, sometimes that helps not as useful. I remember when I was in the corporate world, and there was this term, getting help. And it wasn't associated with positive things. It was associated with, you're going to get a bit of a hairdryer treatment. So actually, sometimes we just need to recognize what does it take to get to the goals, and very often that is a combination of progress, perhaps a few setbacks, and then progress. But that's why setting goals is so important, because once you get to a certain level of success, what people around you see is the end achievement. They haven't seen the journey that you've been on. It's the same for our teams. And I always remember this principle from a business manager that I worked with a long time ago. And he and I talked about, my performance and what I was trying to achieve. And he gave me this piece of advice. I'll never forget it. And I've always used this going forward from that moment. And that was, he said, Justin, don't think about the target that we've agreed as your target, right? That's the company target, right? Don't think of that as your target. Don't plan to just hit that target. Take responsibility and start to think about a bigger number. And the number he and I agreed was a number that was quite aspirational and almost creates a little bit of kind of fear and excitement in you. The number he and I agreed was 20% over the target. So it was a kind of coaching conversation where he said to me, just think about it. What would it take for you to achieve 20% above your target? So you start to think differently. You start to stretch your own thinking. Nobody's forcing you to do this. This is a decision that you make that gets you thinking beyond your usual kind of operating mode. So you start to think, right, actually, okay, so my pipeline needs to be that much bigger, or the number of clients that I'm in conversation with needs to be that much greater, or the size and scale and scope of the opportunities I'm talking to needs to be that much bigger. But it's surprising how just this one principle, planning to overachieve your targets by X%, and as I say, 20% is the number I tend to work off. It's amazing how this gets you thinking differently. And it doesn't mean you have to work 20% harder. It means you have to think differently to achieve 20% greater than you're achieving today. So I share this with you because it was really useful for me. And then when I managed teams that were multidisciplinary outside of just sales teams, clinical teams, customer service teams, marketing teams, finance teams, when I managed different teams, what the conversation with them was about wasn't just about the numbers, because of course they didn't have financial numbers that they were trying to achieve. We would talk about what does high performance in your role look like, and what would 20% improvement or greater value in the role look like. And that was a really interesting conversation, because actually people start to think differently. I could be more proactive in this area, or I could start to anticipate these situations happening, or I could start to ask people in my, that I collaborate with, what more could I do to really over deliver in your expectations? And that's fascinating how we start to get people thinking about this plus 20% principle. And it really does stretch people's imaginations around what does high performance look like. So I share that with you because it's been really useful for me. And then alongside that, one of the things that I do when I work with clients and teams is one of the early things we talk about, and it's one of the things that I did when I led a lot of larger business teams, was to have this conversation about why, right? So talking to people about why they are doing what they do and why they want to achieve their business goals. And it's really interesting what comes out from those conversations, because what that allows your team to understand, because very often people won't ask themselves this question. We said at the start, this is some thinking space because we're so busy doing the day-to-day tasks. Newsflash, so are your teams. They're busy doing their day-to-day tasks, and they aren't thinking about why it's important to them personally to be successful in their roles. But having these conversations surfaces some really interesting ideas, conversations, and information for you as a leader. Because for some people, it will be about a personal drive to be successful. They see themselves as someone who is a high performer, right? And that's a great conversation to have. What does that look like? And you can start to cultivate that as an idea with them. For other people, it might be about, financial security and providing for family. For other people, it might be actually I'm motivated by money, and the money allows me to have a lifestyle that I want. But the interesting thing is it's different for everybody. And there might be elements of all of those for certain people, but there'll be a predominant driver. And understanding that, especially as we go through, to this opportunity right now, we're at the half year. We want to go back to some of those fundamentals. What are the targets for the remainder of the year? Why is that important that they make that gear change to get into that next level of performance for the second half? They're really, really useful conversations, and perhaps conversations that we sometimes overlook. We don't consider how powerful they can be. So really thinking about this is important. And there's a number of reasons why we do this, but one of the reasons is, and if you haven't heard about this before, it's interesting. When I first learned about it, I was kind of fascinated by the concept. But the way the mind works is, we have this function in the brain called the reticular activating system. And what that system does is, as soon as we decide as human beings we want to achieve something or we want to obtain something, the mind goes on the lookout, right? And the way the reticular activating system works is it starts to screen out the things that won't get us to the goal, but starts to tune into those things that will. And it's proven in science that this is really effective. It's why if when you're looking for a new car, or you're looking for a new piece of technology, or maybe a new watch, or a new piece of jewelry, or something like that, you start to see it show up everywhere, don't you? You become, you're like, oh, someone else has got one of those, someone else has got one of those. And actually, all it is your mind saying, that's important to me. I'm focused now on achieving that, or having that, or obtaining that, or saving for that, or whatever it is. And it's the same with our goals. So once you start to set goals, once your team start to set these goals around, right, I want to achieve, let's say, 20% high performance, or 20% increased sales performance, if it's sales, then actually the mind starts going, right, where are those opportunities that are going to drive that additional growth? But unless we set the goal in the first place and we create some intrinsic motivation towards it, we never get that tuning in to the opportunities for the next level of growth. So really important that we help our teams to start to think about this. And this half-year point is a really good opportunity for, practically, tactically, to, if you have an organization and a team that have like maybe a pipeline, or you have, the key customers that they're working with, just to go back through and assess that priorities and the pipeline, really get clear on, okay, which are the opportunities, which are the key customers, who are we talking to, where do we think we are with them, and go through it line by line in a way that helps them to get complete focus and clarity. And I have this tool. If anybody wants a copy of this tool, you are very welcome. I'll send you this document. It's a really simple tool that helps you to do it. So you've got, account name, key stakeholder in the account, the position that they hold, their role in the sales process, and hopefully that's decision maker for most people. What's the focus product or service or solution we're providing? What's the value of that account today? What's the opportunity value? What does that mean for us in terms of total potential for that customer? And then what sales stage are we at? When do we think it's going to get, move to close and commitment? What's the status right now, and what's the action I need to take? And in terms of bringing everything into a single place and manage it with absolute clarity, I've found this is really, really useful. And I, this is something I actually use myself. So this is my current pipeline. I took a screenshot today. I've blanked out the names. This is how I operate, and it really does help me to prioritize and kind of review and work out, okay, what's important, where am I with certain opportunities, and then I resort and re-engage with people. It's a really useful way to work on it. And so that's kind of practically, how do we kind of start to manage ourselves, think bigger, and encourage our teams to do the same. Then, of course, the important thing is to get our teams involved in this. So how do we enroll our teams on this mission that we might be on together? And I always think, I use this mantra a lot in a lot of our leadership programs. We have to manage ourselves first before we can manage our teams effectively. So self-management before, team management. And it's the same with goals, right? We can only communicate goals to our teams with any sense of meaning if we're clear on them ourselves. So we have to get clear on them first. This is really important. And then thinking about this higher purpose and clarity is really important, so that we're communicating clearly, but so that people receive clearly. That's the most important thing. But also having a higher purpose. We talked about this, why do people do their work? Why do they want to be successful? That's really what engages people. And it's interesting because we can all suffer from drift, right? And this phenomenon around drifting off track is really, really quite common. And there's a great business book called Traction by Gino Wickman, and he talks about the 90-day drift. And if we don't reset and bring people back to the key priorities every 90 days, they drift off track. It's human nature. It's just kind of how we operate. And so this regular reset conversation helps to maintain focus and momentum in the right direction. Really important that we do it for our teams. And so, as we're growing businesses, we really want people to get involved in that and feel part of that, because there's an energy that inspires an entire team when we're growing, and there's an excitement about the business. And that energy that the teams feel immediately is transferred to customers or patients, depending on your environment. And so we really want the team to feel that level of positive energy, so that they can then take that to customers and generate more success. And of course, there's no individual that can grow a business. We have to see it as a team. It's a collaborative impact and effect on a business. And it's most effective when everybody, all of the team are on board with that. That's why it's important to have these individual conversations and collective conversations. So I recommend, discussing the plan for the business and sharing this, 20% plus mindset idea with each team member one-to-one, and see if you can engage them in that conversation, see what it means for them. How do they start to think about this? And then understanding, as we said, the motivation of each of them, and of course then linking to the reward for being part of those growth ambitions. And in some roles it's more tangible, in sales roles with commissions and bonuses, but actually in other roles in a business it might be that they are then able to get higher levels of contribution grade, and that might directly impact their salary increases. So you can start to understand, how do we join up the dots with what this person's motivations are and how we can help show a reward that aligns with that as part of their contribution. And always thinking from your team's perspective, what's in it for me? That everybody thinks the same. If there's a big change coming in a business, everybody thinks, God, what's the impact on me? If there's a new program that we're launching or a new initiative, people think, well, what's in it for me to get on board? And as leaders, we often have to reframe our own perspective to think from our team's point of view, what's in it for them, so that we can really help them engage and perform and kind of hit the kind of growth ambitions that they really want for themselves. And then final thing, I like the idea of re-energizing expectations. It's a perfect time of year, halfway point. People are going to get a bit of downtime in the summer. Help them to re-energize it as they go into the second half. And I use this approach for setting goals, which we call the 1-3-3. And this is just an example where you've got a really simple document that helps you to document, to capture the goal, document the goal, and then think about these three areas of priority, and then 3 key actions per priority stream. So you end up with kind of 9 elements to a set of expectations that you can manage and track really simply on either a monthly or a quarterly basis. And you can just really help your teams to get clear on what are the things that I do that contribute and really make the difference towards achieving my goals in the business. And lots of variations. This is one for sales and commercial roles, but we have one for technical roles, for clinical roles, all sorts of different roles, just so that you can start to map these out and manage them really effectively with your teams. So the full top 10 how to accelerate business growth. Here's the top 10. I'll include this in the slide deck that comes through to you. So 10 things that you can do that are hopefully quite practical and tangible. There's a longer form article I wrote on this as well. If anybody would like the link to that, I'll happily share that as well. So that's us. We're about 20 minutes in. I hope you're finding this useful. The idea of these sessions just to really think about your ideas and what's working. A couple of comments in the chat. I'll just cover those. Joe, thank you. Good to see you, Joe. Thanks for being here. Clarity perceives mastery. Last night with Sandy. Yeah, I was on a webinar last night, and with there were 5 of us on a panel, and one of the comments which I really liked, actually, Joe just reminded me of it, was clarity perceives, or I don't know if perceives was the right word actually, Joe, but precedes, that was the word. Clarity precedes mastery. So you have to have clarity before you can get to mastery. And Joe, the 90-day drift, the book that includes the 90-day drift is Traction by Gino Wickman. I'll show you the cover once we've finished the breakout discussions. Okay, I hope that's useful. I hope that's prompted some thinking. Let's give you an opportunity to talk about what you've heard so far. Let me see, how many people have we got? Okay, so we'll do 3 breakout rooms. There'll be a couple of rooms of 3 and then one of 4. So let's just, a couple of 2, one of 4. So if I can ask you just to get into the rooms, introduce yourselves, say hi, and then just have a conversation about what you've been thinking. So through this session today, what's occurred to you? What are some of the ideas that we've covered? What might you need to do? And then when we regroup, we'll just take some feedback from each room, and then I've got to share a couple of slides, and then we'll wrap up. So we'll have about 15 minutes in the breakout rooms, I'll perhaps drop into some of the rooms to check in on the conversations. But I hope you enjoy meeting your colleagues and enjoy the conversation. So I'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. You should all have a link now to join the different rooms. Enjoy, and I'll see you shortly. Resume our recording. I'd love to hear some of your feedback. So what we're trying to do here, I'm sure you'll know this if you've been with us before, but the idea is there's three kind of elements of learning, right? So element one is sharing some content, sharing some ideas, hopefully stimulating your thinking, which is the first part of the session. Second part of the session then is to process that, discuss it with peers and colleagues and actually people from different businesses, because that's going to stimulate your ideas and thinking and ideas sharing. And then the third element is just replaying back the high level. Okay, what are the themes? What are people thinking and are going to do with this? And that gives us that third level of kind of idea sharing and hopefully ideas for action. So let's go through it group by group. Group one was Joe, Pretty, and Steve. Would one of you be prepared to share back what you discussed?
I'm happy to start off. Just
thanks,
sure.
Thanks, Steve.
You may dive in. I'm the odd one out. I'm the non-dental person amongst us on that group. But I think
you're the lucky one.
yeah. I realise that. But I mean, I think there are a lot of challenges, obviously, when you're running a practice, and I'm a self-employed coach as well, so I sort of share some of those problems. There's only one. I think one of the things about this, Justin, is time is moving so quickly. There are so many different pressures. We can keep ourselves busy doing different things. You know, that's not an issue. I think when I spoke to Pretty and Joe, and obviously Pretty's running a practice as well with lots of different people involved, it's focusing on the things that make a difference to customers.
Yes.
That add value to the business. That was the overarching feeling that we kind of left with. And I think there's been a lot of good comments recently. I think Stephen Bartlett was speaking at a recent conference about this. So if you're in the industry, you may have seen it.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing just overall from a business perspective, and the reason I think it's great that you're doing this, is that using these opportunities, whether it's Q2, Q3, Q4 is too late really, but time of the calendar now to have this conversation about where are we as a business, and are we just reminding people about what we're focusing on. And then this idea that I think you brought up, which I think was great. I mean, we kind of like talk about going the extra 20%, but talking about why and having people who work for you in the team that have that sort of mindset, that takes us back to why recruitment is such an important part of what we do as well. So I think those are the things I got out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks. Yeah, really, really good kind of consolidation of the ideas. Yeah, thank you. Brilliant. Pretty, Joe, anything you'd like to add, or has Steve covered it? Oh, good. I
can talk for England, as you know, Justin. So I think I've covered.
That was pretty succinct, Steve.
I'll turn on the mute now.
You got some thumbs up, Steve. Well done. Thank you. Okay, great. So group two was Archana, Charlotte, Heidi, and Eust. Who'd like to share back from your discussion?
I can get started. That's fine. And then
Thanks,
chip in wherever I forget things. I think the thing we got started with is really just making sure that you get the targets clear and as defined as possible. I think that's one of the things that I personally took out of the initial part of your presentation, where it's like, make sure that you understand what the targets actually are before they get communicated, and understand the full scope of them too. And then trying to make sure you get the actual buy-in or the understanding and the motivation in check for those targets in order to go that route. And then things that Heidi mentioned, like everybody has a different motivation. Some want to have more money, other ones want to have personal development, other ones are just appreciative of the stability of having the gig and just want to continue doing what they're doing, right? So I think one of the challenges there is like, find the motivation per individual in the team. I think everybody has a different size of team, so for some that might be a bit easier than others. And then the other thing that I think was a big one for me, at least, which I am not doing currently, is doing the sort of the 90-day thing, or as Heidi's doing it, like a quarterly business. How do you call it, Heidi? Quarterly business review is what you said.
Yeah.
To sort of run through a little bit from a little bit bigger picture aspect of running through things. Where are we at? How are you looking for the next quarter? What are your biggest successes from the last 90 days? And what are you looking for the next 90 days? Type of thing to really keep it a little bit smaller and keep the one-on-one monthly on a bit more of a personal level instead of really focused. And depending on the industry, I guess it's a little bit more fluent based on what's going on. So yeah, that's sort of what we ran through, making sure the targets are clear, both business-wise, personal-wise, and then also like what's set on the presentation, what's in it for the actual people.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joost. Really useful. I like that. The principle that you talked about with Heidi, where you've got this QBR, quarterly business review, and then monthly you've got this rhythm of kind of perhaps getting into more personal conversations, just reconnecting with that intrinsic motivation and making sure that people are okay, because we're dealing with people, right? Not just numbers. So it gives you that opportunity to blend the two, make sure people are okay, firing on all cylinders, looking after themselves and able to perform, and then quarterly being able to go back to that high level reset. I really like that as a rhythm. That's really useful. Thank you, Joost, and the group. Appreciate it. And then final group, we lost Brian, but it was Dorcas, Emma, and Brian. So Emma and I and Dorcas had a conversation. Emma, are you okay just to share some high level thoughts from our session? Realize I'm putting you on the spot, Emma. You're on mute, by the way, Emma. If you're
hello, Emma.
Oh, you're back. There we go. Hi, Emma. I can hear you.
Thank you for this. We were just discussing the importance also to have the one-by-one conversation with the staff to make him be part of the team, really more part of the team and involved with the plan and the structure that we have to make the goals more like touchable for them. In that way, also taking into the consideration all the opinions with the clinicians in the case of the dental practices, also the staff, and letting know where we are at and where we want to go. Yes, just to to make them part of the plan that we have, and make them also work towards that.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. And that, as you say, that making sure that you're covering the one-to-one conversations and the team conversations, so you've got that full alignment.
Obviously, taking all the what you say, obviously with the goals and everything very with our structure, but make them part of all of these, just to let them know what is our goal, and
It's good. Thanks, Emma. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I've noticed time and time again with different businesses I work with and the businesses that I've led personally is that what is common amongst businesses are job descriptions. And what is uncommon amongst businesses are really clearly articulated, documented, and agreed goals. And that sounds like they're the same thing, and they are so different, right? So what constitutes a job description versus what constitutes performance in a role, and how you document, manage, and engage people to really deliver in that, they're two completely separate things. And that's really important. When we think about the reset, sometimes the reset is also for us as leaders to say, actually, have we created enough clarity for our teams about what high performance looks like? And that's, I'll leave you that as a kind of thought to ruminate on, because we make this assumption that people know what they're doing, and very often people do day to day, but actually achieving goals is something else. Getting people to stretch to that next level of thinking, next level of commitment is something else altogether. So we as leaders have to inspire that, because people will not do it for themselves. I promise you. Having been in leadership roles for decades, people don't. You get the odd person. You get 10% of your people will come to the table with, this is what I want to do. Here's how I want to deliver it. And it's like, it's wonderful when that happens, but it is, it's the exception to the rule, not the rule. So for everyone else in the business, as leaders, it really is incumbent on us to work with them over a series of conversations, series of discussions and meetings, to make sure that they're absolutely clear and to help them unlock that next level of motivation. Okay, brilliant conversations today, everybody. Thanks so much. Any more for any more? Anybody got anything that's burning from their conversations? Heidi.
Yeah, when we spoke about that, you know, the think plus 20%, what's going to put you in that stretch zone?
Yeah.
Like you just said, I mean, you'll naturally get people that go, well, you've set my targets, and that's kind of, and where I work, we tend to talk about our targets a limiter. You know, if you were to set your own targets, what would that look like? If we set the bar at this, that's what you're going to aim for. But what, you know, what would more than that look like, feel like, etc.
Yeah,
And
nice.
you know, so in the team, we do tend to have sort of your, what would be your champagne moment this quarter, or what would be your champagne goal? And you don't necessarily get a bottle of champagne; they're not all into drinking. But you know, what would be your celebratory moment that we would celebrate as a team at our next regional meeting? So you know, the more of them that achieve, then they naturally put themselves in that stretch zone without me sort of going, okay, well, we've got your targets, but now we want you to do more, kind of thing, because you immediately get those sort of barriers put up. So helping them motivate, or sort of helping them, or finding their why as to what would it feel like, what you know, put yourself there, visualize it, you know, how amazing would that feel? That's your stretch, that's your champagne moment, kind of thing.
Yeah. I like the way I really like the way you describe that, Heidi, because what you're also doing there is this whole, you know, what we sow, we reap, right? So as you're starting to share these ideas, you're thinking about success, you're getting people to celebrate it and have this positive association with it. Then as you start to talk about those stretch targets or stretch achievements, actually people feel good about it. They don't feel resistant to it. So you've got some really good practices in place there, Heidi. Thanks for sharing. That's really useful. Something worth, you know, everyone listening, you know, whenever we're in one-to-one conversations on these sessions, whilst Heidi's talking to me, actually she's sharing this with everybody, right?
Yeah.
So everybody hopefully can kind of get some ideas around that. Sometimes we have to do that for ourselves, right? Leadership is a tough gig. So sometimes we might have to remember our own success and champagne moments and go, actually, look at the great things I've been doing this week or this month or this quarter, kind of, because we'll often face more challenges than we will, you know, smooth, easy transition, easy rides. There's not very many of those. So checking back in on all the stuff that we should be celebrating and be thankful for is really useful for our own motivation and the motivation of our teams, because it's far too easy. You know, even on this call, I'm saying Q3 reset. Let's think about the second half of the year. We've already moved on to the second.
We're already in it, yeah.
So actually, it's a really good reminder. Check back at the half year point. We can also say to people, you know what? You've had a great 6 months. Yeah. Let's celebrate some of those key milestones and achievements. Talk them through. Get people really energized about what they've already achieved, and then that's a really good segue to how do we help you do that again and find that next level as you go into the second half. Really good. Thanks. It's a great reminder, Heidi. Thank you. Excellent conversation today, ladies and gents. Thanks for tuning in for it. Right, I've got any more comments? Anybody got anything that's burning that they'd like to share with the group? Anything else? Okay, no, good. Thank you. So I've got a couple of other things that I'd just like to share before we close. Hold on a sec. Let me find my screen. There we go. Okay. So I shared this last week. We did a resilience and productivity challenge last week, and I found this quote. I really liked it, so I thought I was going to I'm recycling for today. It's believed that the average person uses no more than 10% of his or her potential. 10%. We're not even scratching the surface of what we're capable of, and this is for us as leaders and our teams. We're all blessed with a continent of unexplored gifts and talents. We have to use them and develop them, or we lose them. So really important, you know, people that are coming into these sessions, hopefully these are helping you to start to unlock that next level beyond your 10%. And very often we get that through the collaboration with other people. If you are in a leadership position, if you haven't seen this before, I'd really invite you and encourage you to think about the Coaching Leaders Scorecard. This is a scorecard we use in our business when we run our programs. As we start leadership development programs, we ask people to take this assessment, and it gives them a baseline around where they are today in their leadership style. If you haven't seen it before, you haven't used it, it's completely free. Let me just drop the link to that in the chat. So if anybody would like to use the scorecard and take it, you'll get, what happens once you've taken it, you get a free professional development report on a PDF to your email, and it just starts to give you some direction and some guidance around where you might need to focus in terms of leadership development, especially in this area of coaching, because coaching really is the kind of leadership superpower that unlocks strong leadership potential. I like to share these 5 things. So these are 5 things I've learned over the course of my leadership career. What does it take to be successful? It takes having an opportunity to have confidential conversations. It takes a community. You know, it's a bit like they say, it takes a village to raise a child, right? It takes a community to thrive as a leader. You need collaboration. We need people that can share ideas with us, and hopefully these sessions give you that opportunity. We need people to challenge our thinking, otherwise we'll do what we keep doing day in, day out. And the evidence shows that for most people, your mind generates the same thoughts 90% of the time, right? 90% of the time your thoughts go to the same place. So we need people to challenge our thinking, really important. And then finally, we need commitment to act. Because even in today's session, you know, we'll have some great ideas. What makes the difference is when you take what you've learned and you put it into action. That's what really makes the difference. So commitment's the thing. If you'd like to join, we have this LinkedIn group called the Coaching Leaders Network. If you'd like to join that group, feel free. There's lots of free assets and information. It's a LinkedIn group. Let me just put that link in the chat as well. You're welcome to join us in that group. We're trying to kind of cultivate a bit of a community within that LinkedIn group, so feel free to join it if you like. And then final thing for me, if anything we've talked about today makes you think I'd like to do a bit more, I'd like to know a bit more, perhaps like a bit more exploration on that, then I'll also invite you to a 45-minute one-to-one discovery session. If you'd like to have a chat about your business, about what you're up to, and if I might be able to help, I'd love to have that conversation. As soon as you click on that link, you'll get access to my diary. You might not get me for a little while because tomorrow I fly to Spain for 6 days. Those of you who know me know I'm often on holiday, at least once a quarter, sometimes more. But that is, you know, that's part of the plan, right? Get the plan in place, and it all comes together. So if you'd like a one-to-one, please do feel free to catch up with me. And then final message, and then we'll wrap up. Remember, right? It's never too late to be who you might have been. I love that George Eliot quote. If there's someone you want to be, it's never too late, right? You can be that person. They're the final words. Thanks so much for joining us for this Lunch and Learn, Leadership Lunch and Learn. I hope you've got 2 or 3 ideas that you're taking away and that you can use in your businesses. Just one other thing, Heidi put a link to the book, the Traction book, in the chat as well. So that's there if anybody is interested in the chat. Pretty, thanks for your note. I'll try and find a link to the webinar from last night and I'll send it to you. If I can include it in this email, I'll send it as the follow-up. Okay, thanks, Pretty. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great rest of the week. And hopefully I'll see you at a future session.
Thanks,
Justin. Thanks, Justin. Bye.
Pleasure, everyone. Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, everyone. See you. Bye.